Hey everyone, welcome back. We're continuing reading of the Sealed Nectar. Excellent book's been very helpful. Definitely glad I read it. We're getting real close. How much we got left? So let's begin, fam. Alright. There were also other fortresses in Haybar besides these 8, but they did not reach the size or fortification of these. The fighting occurred only in the first section of the city. In the second section, the 3 fortresses secured themselves and held their fighters without coming out to face the Muslims. So they utilized their fortifications. Pretty common strategy, right? I mean, if you got it, why not use it, right? Okay. The Muslim camp. For encampment, the Prophet, peace be upon him, had chosen a certain plot of land he deemed suitable to serve as the headquarters of his army. However, a veteran fighter of his called Hubab bin al-Mundir, okay, let's mark his name down, suggested that they should relocate under the requirements of war and for the sake of providing maximum movement facilities. Maximum movement, so must not have been happy for where they were. Preparing to fight and the good news of victory. When the night entered, or thereafter, the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "Tomorrow I will give the banner to a man who loves Allah and His Messenger, and Allah and His Messenger love him." In the morning all of the people gathered around him, hoping that they were the one the Prophet, peace be upon him, mentioned during the night. The Prophet, peace be upon him, called for Ali bin Abi Talib. So you got Ali bin Abi Talib, Hubab bin al-Mundir, who had problem with his eyes. So he supplicated for him, and the problem left. Okay, so it's contending that the Prophet cured the participated in the pleading to heal his eyes. He then added the banner to him, Ali. On his part, he pledged he would fight the enemies until they embraced Islam. The Prophet, peace be upon him, answered him, saying, "Proceed upon your way until you enter their midst. Then invite them to accept Islam and brief them on their duties towards Allah. I swear by Allah that if only one should be guided by you, that would surely outweigh the best camels." Hey, look at that. So saying that, hey, what you gotta do is you need to let people know what they have to maintain, right? Their duties, and encourage them. And if even one person ends up becoming a devout Muslim, that's worth a lot in rank, right? The actual operation begins. The Prophet, peace be upon him, began the campaign by reducing the minor strongholds, one after the other. The first fort he was to attack was Naim, the first defense line with a strong strategic position. Marhab, the leader of the fort. Okay, so Marhab's the guy who's in Fort Naim, invited Amir bin al-Aqwa to meet him in combat, and the latter responded. When Amir struck the Jew, his sword recoiled and wounded his own knee. Ooh, so he struck him, he missed, recoiled. He wounded your knee, man. Oh, and he died of that wound. Oof. Ah, man. The Prophet, peace be upon him, later said, "For him, Amir, there is a double reward in the hereafter." Oof. Your kneecap. Busting kneecaps. Oi! That's horrible. He indicated this by putting 2 fingers together. Like this? Yeah, maybe? I don't know. Ali bin Abi Talib then undertook to meet Marhab in combat and managed to kill him. Yasir, Marhab's brother, then turned up challenging the Muslims to a fight. Okay, so Yasir's like, "Hey man, I want some." Az-Zubair was equal to it and killed him on the spot. Oh snap! So Az-Zubair killed Marhab's brother Yasir. Dang, right on the spot. "I will fight!" Dead. Real fighting then broke out and lasted for a few days. The Jews showed courage and proved to be too difficult even to the repeated rushes of the experienced soldiers of Islam. So even here we're learning more and more, right? There's a long history in that area that we are not very aware of. can't just look at it in the 2020 perspective, right? However, they later realized the uselessness of resistance and began to abandon their positions in An-Naim and moved into the fortress of Assab. Okay, so leaving the position of An-Naim and then heading over to Assab. Al-Hubab bin al-Mundir al-Ansari led the attack on the fortress of Assab. Okay, I'm going to put a little annotation by that. Hey man, who led the attack on the fortress of Assab? Well, it was Al-Hubab. And they laid siege to it for 3 days, after which the Muslims stormed it with a loot of booty, provisions, and food to fall their lot therein. Okay, so they ended up getting it. 3 days, that's pretty quick. This victory came in the wake of the Prophet's invocation to Allah to help Banu Aslam in their untiring and daring attempts to capture that fort. During the process of the war operations, extreme hunger struck the Muslims. Now, this is interesting because every great moment in time seems to have been followed by hunger. I mean, when Caesar was in his camps, they had really rations. This is quite common. Even when the first people were coming over to America, right? Food going bad on the ship, right? Bugs getting in the grain. There's a struggle for food. Even John Smith, that was his name, right? The guy he's turned into some type of weird mythos, legend, hero, worship guy in American history. But what's interesting is that he had a very deep work ethic, and he said those who don't work don't eat, because they were going through almost starvation when they first came over here. And then obviously you're able to barter with Native Americans and exchange food and stuff, because they were not used to the climate, and how these hunting grounds over here was different than where they left. But every great battle has some struggle in history where you have to deal with hunger. So I'm not surprised to hear that hunger struck the Muslims as well. They lit fires, slaughtered domestic donkeys, and began to cook them. I didn't know you were allowed to eat a donkey. The Prophet, peace be upon him, inquired about the fires and cooking, and ordered that they should throw away the meat and wash the cooking pots, forbidding the practice of eating such meat. Oh, okay. Good. Okay, so you can't eat donkeys, yeah. I don't think it would taste very good, and it's such a loyal animal. I mean, I just couldn't eat a little donkey. Some people eat horse, but no. Horses are your friends, just like dogs. You cannot. It just doesn't feel right. Cow is like, oh, yummy. You get milk, you get bone broth. I mean, you can eat that meat raw. Very few parasites. I mean, yeah, very just awesome animal to eat. You can get everything from it. But a little donkey, I don't know, man. Can't be doing that. The Jews, meanwhile, evacuated An-Nata and secured themselves in Az-Zubair Fort, a strong defensive position inaccessible to both cavalry and infantry. Oh, snap. Okay, so that means it's up to the archers then, maybe? The Muslims besieged it for 3 days, but in vain. A Jew spy told the Prophet, peace be upon him, about a water source under the surface of the earth that provided them with water, and advised that it be cut off in order to weaken their resistance. Oh, snap. The water supply. The Prophet, peace be upon him, did that, so the Jews came out to engage with the Muslims in fierce fighting, during which some of the Muslims and 10 Jews were killed, but the fort was eventually conquered. Aha! So the Az-Zubair fort was taken down partially due to the information a Jewish spy passed on to the Prophet, information about a water well. Oh man, that's like smart. Okay, so you know what's really interesting about that? Okay, so that's under the ground, that's water. If you notice in Lord of the Rings, when they're going in Helm's Deep, they learned gunpowder, and then they put the gunpowder in, Lord of the Rings through the sewage hole, right? Through the water entrance and getting at the foundations, right? Like water was the way in which, and then Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones, he also was able to show how you get into Casterly Rock through the sewage system, the water pipes. So what's interesting is, even in fantasy stories, waterways and water access play a key role in power plays. I think in the future, the power plays will become of water rights. That's what people fear today is water rights. Coca-Cola and giant corporations, they have a lot of water rights, and the water is becoming so polluted in the fresh streams that eventually you won't be able to even trust the water out of your pipe. You're going to have to buy bottled water, and you'll have very extreme dependencies on the market system to get water. And if you need water, a government can bend you to their will very easily. So here, when water comes into play and it helped bring down a fortress, and they were specifically located in a distinct area where the cavalry couldn't reach them, right? And the infantry couldn't reach them, but that spot of water was able to take them out, right? You get it? You think people don't expect where that's gonna be, where it's gonna come from. You get it? Reminds me of the Quran verse that says they don't perceive where it's gonna come from, their downfall. Do you remember which one I'm talking about? They perceive not where it'll come from. It's very cool.